All right. Hi, Daniel Carney from Goodlife. Welcome to this video. Now, we're going to get you to talk today about a variety of new build issues. But first, I just want to stick up a disclaimer that no one watching this video should make any wild decisions based on the pearls of wisdom that we come up with today. Fair enough? We'll do that. So don't make any decisions on this. Always seek financial advice from a good financial advisor. All right. Hi, Daniel. How's it going?
Good. How are you, Rupert? Good to see you.
Yeah, very good.
Thanks. Me on.
Yeah, no problem. Hey, we are going to talk about, because just tell us a little bit about what Goodlife Financial Advice kind of does in terms of finding properties for their clients, and maybe that will give some perspective on what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, it's funny you said it, because I just had this conversation today with one of the builders with a property manager who works alongside one of the builders we work with. So we've been doing this for about 23 years. We are very pro residential investment property for our clients because it's where the lion's share of our clients' wealth comes from. So we've seen every fathomable type you could imagine and every fathomable type of contract as well along the way. So it's part of an overall holistic financial planning strategy, retirement planning strategy that we put together for our clients. But property is the mainstay and always has been, and more than likely always will be for our clients. So we're into the property game thick and fast on a daily basis.
Yeah, I suspect I'd love to pull out a one of the sale and purchase agreements from 23 years ago and just see what what prices they were going for. Might have even been just a couple 100,000 or 100,000 or so, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Amazing, eh?
It has gone crazy.
So one of the least known things about the building world, but I think one of the most important things is the sunset clause. So you've got this contract. Just tell us a bit about the sunset clause and from your perspective, and what people should be looking out for.
Yeah, it's funny because we don't really have a problem with it with our clients. I guess it's because who we work with. But I mean, there was a article in the Herald or something recently within the last week that talked about a poor young couple that got the rug pulled out from them at the last minute and would have had to have coughed up another $150,000 if they wanted to stay in the contract, because the builder had this clause that enabled them to pull out. And certain unscrupulous individuals will do things like that. They'll see all of this capital gain that they've experienced along the way, and they'll say, "Oh, we could cancel this contract and sell this for a lot more." And some of them do. So that's effectively what a sunset clause is. It gets either party or both parties the opportunity to exit the contract at a given date. So that's what a sunset clause is. I could talk to you about better versions of that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that the key is that if a builder can, just wait it out and then exit, there's a bit of a risk there for the client, right? So the but as a generic thing, the sunset clause isn't bad if it's in favor of the client. So if the client can say, "Look, it's been 2 years, I think there's a better way to do this," and they can exit, then that's always preferable because they have that power, right?
Correct, and that's how we would like it to read, and how the lawyers that we work with would like it to read, that it's one-sided in favor of the client, not the builder. The builder doesn't have the opportunity to pull the rug out or exit the contract. The client does, because for some reason it's dragged on far too long, or there's doubts about the builder or something like that they can exit if they so choose. We haven't had a client ever use that clause. They've always gone ahead with the bid.
They just sit there getting capital gains, really, don't they? And
it's horrible. Thousands of dollars of gains.
Not paying a mortgage while you get capital gains. We have had one where there wasn't a sunset clause, and 8 years later they were still waiting for the property to be finished. So the sunset clauses are a good thing. They've just got to be in the favor, and that is up to the lawyer of the purchaser to check, I think, right?
Yeah, I agree, and I also think, look, this isn't gospel, but if you've got either a long-standing or a major nationwide brand that you're building with, it's probably unlikely that they're going to pull something like that on you. It's going to be bad for their reputation if they do that to somebody. So I think that is also a sign, as well as who are you going into the contract with, is important. But yeah, if you've got a good lawyer and they're able to massage things in favor of the client in that respect, then that's definitely going to be a positive thing. I'd say worst case scenario, if you are working with a well-known nationwide brand who's been around for decades, they're probably unlikely to A, not build it, and B, pull the rug out from you for that sunset clause.
Yeah. And look, I was just thinking about that client that we had. She got it in the end. She got it just recently and got it for the price of 8 years ago. So it was a lot of stress for her, I would say. But
someone lost money.
someone lost big time. Yeah. So, but yeah, as you say, look, if the builder's building 1,000 houses a year, they're not going to risk being on the front page of the paper from pulling the rug out. So, but I think the takeaway is get your clients to check or go through legitimate sources to get your contracts done, right?
Yep. It's obvious, but get advice. Just get advice. Just pull in a third party who knows about these kinds of things and get advice.
So speaking of contracts, there's basically two. I think there's two main types of contracts, right? In the building world, and in terms of progress payment builds and turnkey builds, and they come in a variety of names for house and land and turnkey and things. But it's about our fourth most popular article is just the difference between progress payment and turnkey, because people don't get the concept of what's it about. So tell us from your perspective, kind of, what the pros and cons are of, say, the progress payment build versus turnkey.
Yeah, there definitely are pros and cons with both. I'd say if you want the safest route to a build, and the cheapest route is probably a turnkey, because normally, 99% of the time, a turnkey contract is effectively, you do all your due diligence and get your finance all sorted, then you go unconditional and you pay a 10% deposit. So let's just say it's a $1 million property. You put down $100,000. Usually, not always the case, but usually that money's held in the solicitor's trust account. So if anything was to happen during that build, you simply just get that money back, and you've had an opportunity cost with that money because you could have put it elsewhere. So that just gets locked up there, and then the build happens, and that build is funded by the builder. And then when it's finished, code of compliance, you settle on it, and then you own it at that point. So you have to obviously find the other 90% of the contract price. That contract won't move on you. It'll be that price. What you signed up for is what it'll be worth, regardless of how long that took. And then you settle on it, and it's your property. So, it's probably, as I say, the least riskiest, cheapest way to do it, because there's no real holding costs or minimal holding costs on that $100,000. Or if it was cash, no holding costs. And if anything happens, you generally would get that back. But you don't own anything until it's finished. So, as I say, if the builder did go under or something horrible like that happened, you didn't own anything. You don't have an asset. So that's, I guess, the benefit of a land and build package, which is, as you say, there's a million different names for it, but that's effectively a turnkey that we just described. You pay a deposit at the front end, nothing else happens, then you pay the rest at the end. A land and build, or a house and land, or home and land, or whatever you want to call it.
Why are there so many names?
Everyone calls it something different. Effectively, what that one is same due diligence period. Then there's deposits required. Sometimes there's a bit of a wait until title comes out for the land. Title comes out on the land. You settle on that land, and generally, again, there's some sort of deposit component that's paid at that point as well for the build. And then there's certain milestones that are reached throughout the build, like the slab's down, the roof is on, it's closed in, blah, blah, blah. And there's progress payments that need to be paid all throughout that build process. So you're slowly taking on more and more debt as the build goes on. You're having to fund that debt. If possible, we recommend our clients have a buffer facility that pays that. So you're effectively capitalizing the interest into the debt. It's not coming out of your pocket. And then you settle then you pay your final payment and it's finished. With that, of course, if a builder goes under or something happens there, well, you have to find a replacement for that builder. However, you own everything up until that point. So that's the benefit, is unlike turnkey, where you don't really own anything until it's finished, this one, you own everything that happens along the way. So if something was to go awry, it's rare, but it can happen. If something goes awry, at least you own everything up until that point. You've just got the slight nightmare of finding a replacement builder. But most
halfway through a build,
most have some sort of warranty guarantee process in place to help you with that process. And
this is why the banks like the master builder guarantees, right? So that they're covered for that, so they can keep building under a guarantee. Yeah. I mean, from a finance perspective, there's mixed feelings about progress payment. I tend to like them. Some advisors I've heard don't like them because they're a lot of extra work, but from my point of view, it is a bit safer for the client. Mainly because when you buy the section, the bank is kind of committing to giving you the rest of the money, whereas the turnkey, you have to reapply later on, and as we know, policies change, and so you want to have a bit of an extra income if you're going for a turnkey. That's going to be settling in, say, 18 months. So I like the progress payment. You can also kind of feel like you own it immediately. And I've found, the interest rates, they're still kind of 4 or 5%, for floating. So, and of course you only borrow the section and the progress payments as they build. So yeah, it's, but I mean, there is no one or the other, right? There are good pros and cons of both for sure.
Yeah.
What you're seeing most developers use at the moment?
Yeah, that's funny you say that, because that's exactly what I was just going to say. Is it's pretty rare for us to see turnkey. Where we're seeing turnkey the most, it's for those sort of cheaper end properties. A lot of townhouses and things like that tend to be turnkey. More of the standalone houses tend to be land and build progress payment scenarios. We actually do have turnkey opportunities like that are full standalone houses, but they're pretty rare. Most of what we're doing with our clients is, I'd say 9 out of 10 are land and build progress payment contracts.
Yeah. And for first-time buyers who are watching this, just a little tip: get your KiwiSaver out at the purchase of the section. Once you've bought the section, you own land, and if you go to get your KiwiSaver out on the first progress payment, you already own land, and so you're not a first-time buyer. So get that money out on the section withdrawal. It's not that many first-time buyers are rolling around with enough deposit to not need their KiwiSaver on the section purchase, but occasionally if you're getting help from bank or mum and dad, it occasionally happens. So it's
good advice.
It's what we're here for. Okay, the building market in general. So at the time of this recording, we are in the middle of triple CFA, high inflation, LVR, loan-to-value ratios implemented, although that is exempt for builds, debt-to-income ratios. So it's going to be an interesting year. I think it's going to actually calm itself down in about May or June. Which is an eternity away, it would be fair to say at this point. But the builds are in a specifically awesome place in the property market in terms of for investors being tax deductible. They were built after remind me, March 2020, I think.
Correct. Yeah.
So that you can then deduct the interest rate. They're exempt from the LVR, so you only need mostly 20% deposit if it's an investment rather than 40% deposit.
You can even get away with 10% even.
Yeah, one of the banks will do 10 and 10 on owner-occupied and investment, which is, I mean, that's quite a bit of money that you don't need to, if you're talking $1 million, you don't need 400,000, you only need 100,000, which is significant.
Awesome.
Yeah. And what else? What are the other benefits of new builds? There are others.
I'm not sure if you mentioned it, but there's a bit more tax advantages as well. I think you might have mentioned that. The deductibility.
Yeah, I mean, that is the big one. That's the one I'm thinking people aren't really comprehending yet, in terms of probably a difference of $10,000 to $15,000 of income of tax.
Yes.
You're going to have to pay per year.
Yep.
Difference.
No, you're right. That's probably about right. Actually, what we're seeing is probably about another $100 to $200 a week. When we're talking about slightly higher interest rates, if we're worst case scenarioing it, you're probably looking for where the interest is not tax deductible. It's probably going to cost you about another $50 to $200 a week more to fund that negatively geared property than if it was a new build.
So 200 is 10,000 a year. So it's big. Hey, it's So and then of course you've got new builds don't require repairs. They automatically meet the healthy home standards. The other one is the amazing deals that the banks will give you on interest on new builds, in terms of an epically low rate. Don't quote me exactly because this is recorded at a date, but it's around 2.1% when you can get 3.65 as your best option for an existing rate.
I just Googled that earlier on, actually. As of today, the 1st of February 2022, ASB's back my build rate is sitting at 2.29. And as we talked about, you can get away with as low as a 10% deposit for that. So, I know we're not doing this on this call, but that's why the argument is there. If you can't get into your own home, you just need a 10% deposit and you can more than likely get into an investment property. And you can get investment properties as low as the 500,000s or maybe even lower. I haven't really been looking. 50-something thousand, and you can get an investment property at a 2-point-something% rate. It's almost an absolute.
It's a big argument, eh? Yeah, because if that's an investment property, you're getting at this low rate plus it's tax deductible, plus all the other benefits, right? It's amazing. So the question really is, are they going to build enough for to satiate the demand of people? Consents were up last year. It's I think they did 40,000 or 47,000 or something, which is a lot more than they were doing. And I'd like to see that continue, right?
Yeah, for sure. And this is such an interesting conversation because I see really conflicting information out there about supply and demand. There's one particular gentleman, I won't mention his name, everybody knows who he is, who I read religiously, bow down to a shrine of him every Thursday when a PDF hits my inbox.
Let's just call him Tony, for instance.
Yeah, let's just call him Tony. So he's interestingly enough saying we'll probably see the supply-demand met maybe in the next 10 to 12 years. I don't know if that's his latest, but that's what I read last year. What we're seeing on the ground in the trenches, in the front lines, is demand. Like when a house gets built, it gets tenanted. And there's more tenants, more property needed. It's just only going to get harder and harder and harder to own your own home. I think the population, the percentage of the population that that need to rent, I think is just going to continue to go up and up and up and up. So yeah, it's good that consents are going up. Maybe we even maybe we even will meet the demand one day. However, and this is what I asked that gentleman, capital gain still there? No, yes, and he actually said you'd be safe to put 4% per annum for the very long term on that. So even if we met our demand, there's still going to be a very strong argument there for an investment into residential investment property, particularly if it's leveraged and it's done correctly and you've managed your risks, mitigated them, got advice, blah, 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 blah. Disclaimer. It's going to be a well-performing asset class. So, we're just not seeing a slowdown in investors wanting to get into residential investment property. We're not wanting to slow down, and the clientele that we work with are not wanting to slow down. The builders we talk to are not slowing down. The property managers we talk to need more and more and more and more property, have got more and more and more and more backlog of people needing property to rent. So
yeah. It's crazy. I think the housing supply bill it's an interesting one, right? So this is you can divide your house into 3 houses of 3 stories, just real plonk them in your site. I mean, it's an interesting. You don't need consent for it, supposedly. It's an interesting thing, and the PwC consultants, I think it was, said this should result in 100,000 more units or houses or properties, dwellings, I think, there from this result. And I thought that's not much, right? Like 100,000 over the next 10 years. That's a drop in the bucket of what we need. And I'm surprised the number was that small. I think because it's mainly focused in the tier 1 cities, so Auckland, Wellington, and Christchurch, where there isn't a lot of dividable land. But you are going to see a bit of those new houses come up probably in the next maybe 2 or 3 years once it's all gone through and things. But both sides of the governmental fence are on board, so you'd think it would go ahead. But yeah, that'll be interesting to see whether that adds a lot more supply to it.
Yeah,
still got to be able to build them though, right? So
no, you're right. That will be interesting, and I have to admit I haven't had much to do with that side of things. But what I have seen in reality is mum and dads thinking they're sitting on an absolute gold mine and can just plonk on all these properties and make lotto-like numbers out of it, and it ends up not being either the developers turn their nose up at the kind of money that they're looking, or it's just not what they expected. I think when that first got announced, people had dollar signs in their eyes and also thought it would be a walk in the park. But I think people are getting a bit of a wake-up call there. So it's going to be interesting to see how much of that we actually see in reality. And I don't really know either way, but my experience has been what I've just said, because we've had a few clients try to go down that track.
That's potentially why the number is so much lower than I would expect with just 100,000 over 10 years. I think because in reality it's not going to be workable. There's either a house right in the center of the section, or the gradient can't be used, or whatever.
It's just ludicrous amounts of money to get stormwater in there or something like that that they didn't even think about. It's so I'm sure it's going to happen, and it's going to happen a lot. But will it be this pipe dream or this amazing thing that everyone thought it was going to be? I'm not sure. It remains to be seen. Yeah.
Okay, so to finish up, end of 2022, what does the property market look like?
You know what? It's funny because, we have fingers in a lot of pies, managed funds, the share markets, crypto, all this stuff. And inflation is taking off, and it's going to continue to take off in 2022. So what has been a definite hedge against inflation, like what has provided wealth while inflation's grabbing that wealth back off people, and that's property. I'm not saying those other things aren't, by the way, and hopefully the share markets and the crypto markets and everything's come back. I really hope they do. I'm sure, and they will. However, I just think that insatiable love affair with property is here. It's not going anywhere, and I do still think even the government are saying we're going to have fairly substantial capital gain this year. So I think it's going to be a good year for property investors, regardless of when you get in. And you know what? It's a long game for us anyway. We're saying to clients to hold for the long term. So maybe you don't, hit the jackpot this year, but hold on to it, and it will give you good gains in the long term. But yes, I do think 2022 is going to still be a year where we see gains, and because I'm not seeing anything slow down, and I'm on the phone constantly to people all around the country who are in the thick of the property market, and there's no slowing down. Look, it might slow down slightly, but I still think by the end of this year, we will have significant gains in the property space, and people looking for other options, other areas, smaller properties to try to be able to afford to buy something somewhere, so that, the regions, the smaller properties like the townhouses, etc., are, I think, only going to become more and more and more popular this year.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, you haven't solved the supply problem. You haven't. No, the government hasn't.
I tried.
you haven't done anything, Daniel. No, we haven't solved the supply problem. The demand is going to go down because finance is getting harder, but that may loosen up in the end of the, towards the end of the year.
Well, actually, it's good. Actually, that's one point I didn't say is we possibly could see a complete about face on the triple CFA. So, watch this space. There's a lot of heat right now, on this triple CFA, and there's some pretty people with big fists getting in there to do something about that. So, the Australians had done an about face on it. I wouldn't be surprised if we see some real huge changes in that triple CFA space, which will make it a bit easier for people to get lending.
Yeah, it'll allow the banks to become realistic about what their expectations are. It's not their fault; they've been forced to by regulations, but it'll allow them to become realistic, and that will allow people to buy. And you're right, yeah. And interest rates are a little bit higher, but for those of us that remember the 11%, or for those of you that remember the 23%, I certainly don't because I was in nappies, but but that it's 5% is okay, right?
That's totally.
Yeah, cool. All right. Hey, thanks, Daniel, for coming on board. So just give us your website address so people can find you and have a look.
So they've tried to sell me goodlife.co.nz many times, but I don't want to spend tens of thousands of dollars on Goodlife.
Not that one.
It's not that one. It's goodlifeadvice.co.nz. I do own that one.
Good to know. We'll keep working on it. Maybe one day they'll forget to renew it, and we'll grab it from them.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, goodlifeadvice.co.nz, and thanks for coming on board, Daniel.
I really appreciate it, Rupert. Thank you for having me.